So, are we taking the car today, or your place? Let's go to a hotel. On my way back from the hospital, I saw my husband walking hand in hand with a young woman. Who in the world is she? She was dressed in revealing clothing, and I think she was over 10 years younger than my husband. She didn't look like someone from his work. Could it be an affair? Even though it was on the way back from a donor test for a disease he was diagnosed with. I somehow managed to keep my emotions in check and confronted my husband with a glare when he returned home that evening. I saw you walking with a young woman. What's that all about? Betraying me like this is the lowest. How could you do something so awful? What do you think you are? Do you think you're such a great woman? Marriage is supposed to be supported by the man, and the moment a woman stops being a woman, it's over. Men always want young and attractive women. What is he talking about? There's no way marriage can fall apart for such selfish reasons. It seems like my husband is trying to justify his cheating. I will never forgive him. You menopausal hag are not needed. Should I divorce you? Divorce? I've been thinking about it for a while, but you never get pregnant, and as a woman, you're finished. You look old, and you're completely unattractive, so I've wanted to leave you. That's why I cheated and was drawn to a younger woman. It's obvious, right? Fine, then let's get a divorce. But don't forget, you're the one carrying a big bomb in your body. And who's going to help you with that? My name is Kelly. I'm currently working as an office clerk at a small-sized business. Although I'm working as a clerk, I originally joined the company as a salesperson. I'm back. Welcome back. How was it today? Well, I got brushed off lightly. I'm sorry, I couldn't secure the deal even though it was a project our coworker had been warming up. Don't worry too much about it. It can't be helped, so don't get too down on yourself. He was the coworker responsible for my training. He was truly kind to me. He taught me everything from scratch about sales, and I was trying my best to follow his teachings, but I think my personality, not being very assertive and shrinking away at even a slightly domineering attitude, wasn't suited for it. My sales performance was always closer to the bottom, and I felt out of place in the company. Because it was a small to medium-sized business, everyone was talking about working hard together to increase the company's sales, but I felt like I was the only one holding everyone back. I wondered if I should quit, or maybe I should switch to a different profession. That's when I started to think. Can I have a moment? Oh, what's up? I heard we're looking for a new office clerk. That's right. The company has grown a bit, and we're thinking of adding more people to handle the administrative tasks. Do you know someone who wants to apply? Not exactly. I was wondering if it would be okay for me to apply. I've been trying hard in sales for the past 2 years, but I haven't been able to produce much results. I feel like I'm dragging everyone else down. Even when there's a good project, I can't make it a success because it's me. There have been many instances like that. So, if it's possible, I'd like to work as an office clerk. I see. To me, it seemed like moving to an office clerk position and filling the sales position from outside would be beneficial for the company. Of course, I felt sorry for the coworker who had trained me, but it was also a relief for me mentally. I understand. I've heard from other employees about the struggles you're facing, and I think you can handle administrative tasks to a certain extent, so if you're okay with it, let's go ahead and make that change. Really? But about the salary, it's going to be what an office clerk makes, is that okay? Of course. No problem at all. Understood. I started working as an office clerk right away, and since I only had to deal with employees I got along with, there was no need to be overly cautious or tense. Indeed, the salary was less compared to when I was in sales, but being able to work without accumulating stress truly brightened my days. Then, through an acquaintance, I started dating a man, and both my work and personal life were fulfilling. I vow to always cherish you. Will you marry me? Really? You really want to marry me? Of course. I'll always protect you. I was overjoyed to the point of tears when my boyfriend proposed. I had always lacked confidence in myself, believing there was no one who would want to marry someone like me. That had always been my belief, so the proposal overwhelmed me emotionally. Moving from sales to an administrative position was also one of my complexes. I couldn't properly handle even a single task given to me. I had been a negative thinker originally and had convinced myself of this for a while. Of course, while the stress from work had disappeared, the fact that my self-confidence continued to diminish was undeniable. That's why I vowed to cherish him, the one who chose me. In my heart, I swore that I would. After that, our married life began, and we lived a problem-free life as a working couple. However, hey, could you cover the living expenses? In exchange, I'll save up. You mean I pay everything? Yeah. I'll take out my allowance and save the rest. That's okay, right? This is one of my flaws, but when spoken to harshly, I find myself unable to talk back. I was only making a modest salary as an office clerk, so after paying for rent, groceries, and utilities, there wasn't much money left over. Upon getting married, we moved into a reasonably large apartment and, though it was used, we also bought a car. We had agreed to split expenses equally, so I assumed that's how it would be. Got it. But I'm a bit surprised. I had assumed we'd split everything. It's easier if you handle all the expenses, right? As for savings, I'll manage all of that, so don't worry. Well, if my husband says so, maybe it's for the best. Plus, if he's putting most of his salary into savings, I figure we could save up a substantial amount in a short period. We were hoping to have kids in the future, so I wanted to save as much as possible. That's why I accepted his proposal. However, after getting married, he started going out more at night. Hello, you're not coming home yet? I'm going out drinking with colleagues tonight, so I won't be home until late. Again? What? I'm not your parent. Don't butt into my private life. It's my business who I go out drinking with, isn't it? Yeah. Sure, we had agreed not to interfere with each other's private lives after getting married. And it's not that I'm against him going out to drink. It's just frustrating when he goes out without any communication. I get home earlier than him, so I cook and wait. There's a usual time he comes home, and I even prepare the bath, so I wish he would at least call. If he let me know, I'd just make something quick to eat and take a bath after finishing the chores. Just a simple message would do. I've brought this up a few times, but my husband didn't seem to care at all. Maybe he doesn't understand because he doesn't cook or do household chores himself. And then, his personality changes when he drinks. That's why I couldn't really say much. Hey, the lord of the house has returned. Welcome back. Oh, hello. Sorry, it seems he got pretty drunk. Sorry for the trouble. Thank you for bringing him home. Around midnight that day, my husband was brought home by a coworker he had been drinking with. He was so drunk he couldn't walk on his own. I couldn't help but be frustrated that he, being an adult, didn't know his own limits when drinking. Since he was drunk, saying anything to him would be pointless. I thanked the coworker who brought him home and took my husband to bed. He fell asleep right away and around noon the next day. Hey, got any medicine? Medicine? For what? What? Obviously, for a hangover. Why do I have to spell it out? You should have prepared that, knowing I went drinking. Sorry, I'll go buy some right now. Make it quick, and be back in 10 minutes. What does he think I am? I sighed but went to the nearby pharmacy by bike without a complaint. It was already winter, and just riding the bike made my dry skin on my face and hands painfully dry. If he's going to drink, he should buy his medicine beforehand. Why do I have to do this? As I went to buy it, I felt anger towards my husband bubbling up inside. I'm home. I got the medicine. You took your time. You're slow at everything. That's why you can only be an office clerk. Even though I went out of my way to buy it, not a single word of thanks. Can't even say thank you. I was truly appalled, but it's not like I was expecting anything from my husband. Well, someone who's used to bossing people around probably doesn't have gratitude in their vocabulary. So, he can't even say thank you. Well, it's not my problem. While complaining, my husband took the medicine from me, swallowed it, changed clothes, and then left the house. Going out again. It was his day off, so he can do whatever he wants, but I did wish he would help out with the chores a bit. I take care of everything during the weekdays, so it wouldn't hurt him to help out on the weekends. Even just one day, either Saturday or Sunday. But since we got married, my husband has never once helped out with the chores. Being the timid person I am, I thought I wanted a man who could take the lead initially. But now, thinking about it, he's just selfish and looks down on others. I was getting sick of these days, but then suddenly, one day. Can we talk? I have something important to tell you. Something important. Is it about work? No. It's about my illness. I've been feeling off lately, and I've been having trouble breathing even while working. So, I went to the doctor, and they found a disease. You're kidding, right? I was shocked by my husband's revelation since I always thought of him as someone strong who rarely even caught a cold. My husband having a disease. I never imagined it, nor did he show any signs. However, according to him, the disease is quite advanced, and he needs an organ transplant as soon as possible. We need to look for a donor, so it's not immediate, but the situation seems pretty serious. So, you don't need to be hospitalized? They gave me some medication, so I should be okay for a while. But I do need a donor, so I need you to go to the hospital this weekend for a test. If you're a match, I'll need you to be the donor. When my husband told me that, something deep inside me skipped a beat. Of course, if there was anything I could do for my husband, I wanted to extend all the help I could. That's what marriage should be about, after all. However, if possible, I didn't want to donate an organ. One reason was that my husband hadn't been treating me with the respect and care a wife deserves. To him, I seemed like just a tool to be used at his convenience. The only time I felt cherished as his wife was during the first month of our marriage. Additionally, I was scared of undergoing surgery. Of course, facing someone in need of a donor, saying I'm scared of surgery shouldn't really be an excuse. Being mentally fragile, I understood what needed to be done but couldn't bring myself to make that decision. So, what was the outcome? It was a match. We can schedule the surgery for a day that works for you. I took a day off work the next day to go for the testing at the hospital. I hadn't told my husband, but the result was a match. I could save my husband's life, that was the outcome. No matter how much my husband might not cherish me, he was still my partner whom I had married. Of course, the surgery scared me, but I resolved to donate my organ for my husband. However, that day. Should we take the car today, or go to your place? Let's go to a hotel. On my way back from the hospital, I saw my husband walking hand in hand with a young woman. Who in the world was she? She was dressed in revealing clothes, and I think she was more than 10 years younger than my husband. She didn't look like someone from his work. Could it be an affair? Indeed, my husband often came home late at night, but I thought it was just because he was out drinking with colleagues. However, was he actually spending those nights enjoying himself with a mistress? There he was, right in front of my eyes, walking hand in hand with a younger woman. This was unbelievable and a complete betrayal to me. My head went blank, and I was in total panic, but my husband left without even noticing my state. I took a deep breath, somehow managed to calm myself down, and went home. That evening when my husband came back, I confronted him with a glare. I saw you walking with a young woman. What's that all about? Oh, you saw that? Yes, I did. Betraying me like this is the lowest. How could you do something so awful? What do you think you are? Do you think you're such a great woman? Marriage is supposed to be supported by the man, and the moment a woman stops being a woman, it falls apart. Men always want young and attractive women. What is he talking about? There's no way marriage can fall apart for such selfish reasons. It seems like my husband is trying to justify his cheating. I will never forgive him. He's been using me all this time, probably because he no longer sees me as his wife. My suspicions were correct. To him, I'm nothing significant. Just a convenient existence who pays the living expenses and takes care of the house and meals. How dare he look down on people? You're not going to do something like this and not be accountable for it, are you? Yeah, maybe. A menopausal hag like you isn't needed. Should I divorce you? Excuse me? I've been thinking about it for a while. You can't get pregnant, and as a woman, you're finished. You look like an old lady, and you're utterly unattractive, so I've wanted to leave you. That's why I cheated and was drawn to a younger woman. It's obvious, right? This is ridiculous. What does he think marriage is? I never thought he looked down on me to this extent. But, having it said so plainly, I actually felt relieved. He was sick, and he was my partner whom I had married. I thought I might have some mixed feelings, but now I've completely let go. He wants a divorce? Then, I'll gladly grant it. But let this be clear. I will never forgive what he has done. If you want a divorce, I'll give it to you. But don't bother me anymore. You better not come back begging for a remarriage. I'm cutting all ties with you. Understood. I said that and had him sign the divorce papers. The divorce was finalized quickly, and since the apartment lease was in my ex-husband's name, I left, and our life together ended. Then, I started preparing for alimony claims and contacted him a month later. I didn't want to talk to him directly, so I had the lawyer who helped me with the alimony claims contact him, but that evening, my ex-husband called me multiple times. I didn't want to talk to such a person or hear his voice, but thinking I should spill all my feelings, I decided to pick up the phone. Hey. What do you mean you were the organ donor? That was the first thing my ex-husband said. I hadn't told him at the time of our divorce, but the day I found out about his affair was the day I found out I could donate an organ to him. Looking back, if I hadn't known about the affair at that time, I would have unknowingly donated an organ to a betrayer. I thought to myself that God must be watching over me, and I decided then there was no way I'd donate an organ to him. Of course, not telling him anything was an option, but this was my form of revenge. While you were out enjoying yourself with a younger woman, I was worried sick about you and went through the organ donation tests. It turns out I'm a match, but I have no intention of helping a betrayer. Don't say that! If you don't donate, I'll have to start looking all over again. Please! Then tell me, what's in it for me? I see no benefit in donating an organ. It might sound heartless, but I wasn't willing to sacrifice my body to help my ex-husband, not even if there were benefits. Even if there had been some advantage, I couldn't bring myself to extend a hand to my ex-husband. The emotional wounds my ex-husband inflicted were deep, and I wanted him to understand that. I thought I was supposed to donate an organ because I was your wife. But who betrayed whom? Sure, but that's a different story. Just your cooperation could save a precious life. Life is equal, I believe that. There's no difference in the weight of lives, and everyone has the same value. But I couldn't see this monster, this mass of desires, as a person. Even if no donor was found in the end, that's just how it would be. It would only be what he had coming for what he's done all this time. That's all I could think of. I don't feel sorry for him if his illness gets worse, he can deal with it himself. If you get better and are let loose, there will just be more women who suffer like I did. Maybe it's better if you never get cured. What kind of thing is that to say to a sick person? You didn't give a toss about me, so why should I care about you as a sick person? Don't you see the contradiction in what you're saying? You're the one talking nonsense. What do you think human life is? I have more morals than you. But even denying that, I don't want to help you. Besides, I'm a stranger to you now. When my ex-husband realized I had no intention of donating, he seemed to slump, starting to make groaning sounds. How pitiful. I didn't feel a bit of sympathy for him and just wanted to end the call quickly. Is that all? Oh, and I think the lawyer has contacted you about the alimony. Make sure to transfer it properly. That's crazy, that much money? It's not crazy at all. You were the one who said you wanted to save up, so you wanted me to pay all the living expenses. But then it turns out you were just squandering money on your mistress. You think that's okay? This was revealed during the divorce, but the savings I thought we would divide, which my ex-husband claimed he had, were almost non-existent. Since I paid all the living expenses, I had the right to half of the savings. However, he had none because he had spent it all on his escapades. It was clear he had been betraying me from the start of our marriage. I will make sure to get the money I deserve. I don't have any money. Plus, I have a lot of expenses coming up. Right, moving out, paying me, and your medical bills. I wonder how you'll manage all that. If you understand, then why did you make such a claim? Because that's how you take responsibility as an adult in society. After more than a decade in the workforce, don't you know such basic common sense? I'm so appalled I'm at a loss for words. It's common sense. Besides, if you don't pay, I'll have my lawyer take it to court. If you're prepared for that, go ahead. My ex-husband must know he's 100% in the wrong, but he's probably hoping to somehow make me reconsider, knowing he'll be in real trouble if things continue as they are. No sign of remorse. If there was even a hint of regret, there might have been room for mercy, but it seems like people who betray others will always continue to do so. Wait a minute. That's just not right. If you do that, you'll regret it later. You'll definitely have days of regret. Absolutely. So what? No matter how you try to persuade me, my decision won't change. But I was gradually getting more irritated by my ex-husband's attitude. Sure, he must be shocked that I was the organ donor, and deep down, he's regretting his choices. But if he's regretting it, why isn't apologizing an option? A sincere apology. Before making excuses and spouting nonsense, shouldn't that be the first thing to do? Without an apology, all he said to me was, "You'll regret this." Does he think threatening me will make me donate an organ? With such a character, it's no wonder no one will ever come forward to help him. See, it's because you only think of yourself that nobody wants to help you. You don't think you've done anything wrong, do you? What? If you were a bit more reflective on what you've done, you could at least apologize, right? I'm asking if you're sorry for what you did to me. Of course, I'm sorry. So, about the organ donation. You apologize regardless of the organ donation, right? Then you apologize. You are asking me to donate my organs? You're kidding, right? Stop joking. No matter what I said, it was hopeless. Maybe I was foolish to have even a shred of expectation. Expecting such a person to reflect on their actions is futile. That's why I chose not to give him another chance, but to divorce him and make him pay alimony. I've had enough. Engaging with him any further is a waste of time, and I decided to put an end to it. I don't know what you'll do from here on, but I will never help you. Just keep that in mind. No matter the situation, my stance won't change. And about the alimony, if you can't pay, I'll have the lawyer take it to court. I ended the call with just that. From then on, I left all communications to the lawyer, so I didn't say anything directly to him, but he was definitely living a miserable life. Actually, he quit his job because of a stress-related illness. Stress caused it? Yes. He was terrified of not finding someone to donate an organ. Of course, it doesn't seem like his life is in immediate danger, but the excessive stress did him in. I was surprised that such a shameless character could feel stress. If he could feel stress, he should have been more considerate of my feelings. Then, he might understand how it feels to be cheated on or used like a tool, and how much stress that can cause. Well, even if he understood, I doubt it would have changed anything. But you got the alimony paid, right? How did he manage that? It was quite a sum. Oh, that? He must have borrowed it. Borrowed? Yes. It seems he borrowed a significant amount from consumer finance and used that to pay. But now, he can't repay it and has been contacting everyone he knows for help. He even tried to contact me, but I ignored him. You ignored him? After all he did to you, my dear friend, using and betraying you like that. He deserves it. Not only is he not getting help from his friends, but now he's also fighting against loneliness on top of his illness. Well, this situation is entirely his own doing, and I think it's a hard lesson learned. If he can't even understand how despicable his actions were and how much trouble he caused me, then as a person, he's finished. Well, he's finished, and that's probably why no one is reaching out to help him. But maybe his affair partner would stand by him? Like a sole source of comfort? No, they've already split up. Really? Yeah, you haven't heard? That person was only after his money, it seems. Moved on to another man already. I was honestly surprised that even his affair partner had left him. But, thinking about it, it makes sense. My ex-husband spent most of his earnings on his affair partner. That means he was spending tens of thousands of dollars a month on her. For an affair partner, someone spending that much money on them every month is nothing but an easy mark. But once she realized she couldn't squeeze any more out of him, she disappeared. Seeing him treated this way made me wonder if he'd end up distrusting people, but if he did, in the end, it's all his fault. Well, since he used and deceived me for so long, if he gets deceived and used himself, he can hardly complain. He's done the same thing. That's right. Well, we don't know what will happen to him from here, but it's none of our business anyway. You're right, thinking any more about my ex-husband is pointless. I've completely forgotten about him and am enjoying my second life. As an office worker, my salary is still low, and it's not exactly a fulfilling job. But being needed and appreciated by my coworkers makes me feel that it's good to be doing this job. I still think about the organ donation situation from time to time. Even considering everything my ex-husband did, there will always be people who criticize my decision to refuse organ donation. Morally, it might be argued that my choice was wrong. But everything is the result of the choices he made, and I have no regrets about mine. Whatever suffering he endures from here on out is none of my concern. Let him continue to suffer for his sins, that's how I see it as his atonement. Marriage isn't just about paperwork. It's a declaration of intent to support and help each other no matter what. But someone who easily betrays that commitment will eventually be betrayed themselves, and what they've done will surely come back to them. To avoid becoming like my ex-husband, I plan to continue valuing the people and environment around me and live my life accordingly. Huh? You been here? Well, yeah. I moved in a week ago and have been living in this house. I'll take the bedroom you were using on the second floor, so you can use the storage room on the first floor or the unused room on the third floor. What? I wasn't informed about this. What do you mean? The head of the household has given his permission, so I don't need to get yours. The person paying the rent gets to make all the decisions. Huh? I had to ask again, but I'm not hallucinating, right? Why is my mother-in-law living here? I don't understand. It was stressful enough having her visit every week, but living together is out of the question. Sure, my mother-in-law lives alone, and she is getting on in years. Something could happen, and maybe my husband is worried, but it's unacceptable to start living together without consulting me first. Whose house do they think this is? I wanted to say. And my husband, too. This level of presumption is just too much. Hello? When I got back, your mom was here. What's this about living together? What do you mean? It's exactly as you see. There's nothing wrong with it, right? It is wrong. Why wasn't I consulted? There's no need to consult you. I've said it before, but I'm the one paying the rent. Shouldn't you be following my decision? I was so astonished I couldn't say anything. So, he's serious about this. All right, if that's how it's gonna be, then keep saying it. But it seems he's forgotten something important. Does he even remember who we're renting this house from? I won't let him forget just the convenient things. I grabbed the suitcase I had brought on my business trip and went back to my parents' house. My name is Sarah, I'm 32 years old. Currently, I work for an IT company as an engineer, which provides me with a decent income and fulfilling work, allowing me to enjoy my days. Great job today. Huh? You're leaving already? We were planning to go out for drinks today, wanna join? I have plans already today. Could you invite me next time? Is it a guy thing? Well, yeah. Work was fun, and I had a boyfriend who I've been dating for 6 months. My private life was so fulfilling that I really lived a rosy life with absolutely nothing to complain about. You're busy, right? Thanks for making the time for me. It's totally fine. Of course, I'd make time for my loved one. Thanks. I met my current boyfriend through a friend's introduction, and he's a really nice guy who cares a lot about me. I went to a science university, so my student life was really busy, far from any romantic involvements. Even after starting my job, there was something new to learn every day, and I was so busy that I didn't have a boyfriend. But, just before my 20s ended, I got a boyfriend, and it felt like I was gonna marry him. Life was in rosy mode. I truly enjoyed every day from the bottom of my heart. About the future. Talking about marriage? Yeah. I've been thinking about going to greet your parents. Of course. Once work settles down, I'm gonna propose. Can you wait a bit longer? Yeah. I might have rushed him a bit, but I could clearly see a future where we'd get married and be happy together, and I think I spent my days grinning about it. And so, 6 months later, we got married. My parents paid for the wedding and provided us with a new home. My parents run a business and offered us one of their investment properties to use. He wanted to send money back home since he came from a single-parent family, and in that regard, my parents were supportive. About the rent, are they letting us live here for free? No. They're asking for $4,000. Normally, they'd rent this place out for much more, so they're giving us a special deal. What? They're charging us? Even though it's their daughter and son-in-law living here. I'm surprised. Well, it's an investment property, so there are costs involved. My parents aren't really making a profit from this. We can't ask them to cover the maintenance costs for us, can we? No, given they have the money, I think they could at least do that for us. I was a bit surprised by my husband's comment. Indeed, my parents run a business, so they have some financial leeway. However, I'm already independent and can take care of my own life. I think it wouldn't be a big deal for my parents to lend us the house for free, but it's wrong to rely entirely on them for money just because we're their children. As business owners, my parents have always been strict about money matters, and that's why I work and live on my own. Well, living in such a spacious house. They said they're gonna transfer the ownership to us in the future. To expect to live here without paying anything, that's really something. He's quite stingy, huh? If they're making money as business owners, I think they could afford to do that much. Well, if I were in your parents' position, I'd let my child live there for free. That's why, haven't I explained it several times? Why can't you understand? I wanted to say, but for my husband, who expected to live in a large single-family home for free, paying $4,000 every month must seem like a huge burden. Well, expecting to live for free just because it's my parents' property is quite presumptuous. Can't they lower it to about $3,000? What? Lower it further? I already told you it would normally cost twice as much. Even so, they could lower it a bit, right? Come on, it's your parents, so you should be able to negotiate that much. What are you saying? It's exactly because they're my parents that I don't want to be rude. If you had any gratitude, you wouldn't be able to negotiate for a lower rent, right? Seriously, aren't you grateful at all for how cheap they've made it? They even said we could move out anytime we want. If we choose to stay and live here long term, they're willing to transfer the ownership to us. Despite their cooperative attitude, I couldn't understand what my husband was saying. How can he say such brazen things so casually? Thinking only about himself must be exactly what this is. It seems like he thought they were gonna let us live here for free. So, he thinks even $4,000 is too much. I see, well, $4,000 is really pushing it, but the lowest I can go is $3,600. You don't have to lower it any further. Showing him that we're willing to compromise to that extent might make him understand. Plus, with the $400 saved, we can send more money home. His family is a single-parent household, right? Yeah. Well, we're okay, and since you're newlyweds, you'll have various expenses. So don't worry. Just focus on your marriage. Thanks to my father's kindness, I was able to stand my ground somewhat with my husband, and he finally agreed to the rent of $3,600. Since then, we've been living without much issue, and we basically decided that my husband would pay the rent while I would cover the other living expenses. We also bought a car for the family, and since the savings payments were coming out of my money, my husband had more disposable income. But I wasn't much of a spender, and we generally had a good life together, but my mom will be arriving in about 30 minutes, so let's hurry up and finish cleaning. Huh? What? You're not going to clean even though my mom is coming? No, it's not that, but why didn't you tell me sooner? It's so sudden. I didn't necessarily mind his mother coming over, but why didn't he tell me earlier? If I had known sooner, I would have cleaned the house and finished the chores earlier. We don't even have tea. Maybe he didn't think because it's his parent, but if anyone's going to be looked at strangely, it's going to be me. Why can't he think that far ahead? I sighed, but it's too late to be thinking about that now. I'll start cleaning now, so you help too. That's a hassle, you do it. I finally have a day off from work, let me rest. No, but your mother is almost here, isn't she? You can do it, right? I've been busy lately. No, what? What is he saying? He tells me his mother is coming over and wants me to clean, but he won't help at all? I was already irritated by such a sudden request, and now I'm about to lose it with his selfishness. I want to finish cleaning quickly because we're in a hurry. No, you want me to do it all? That's not fair. No, you're the wife, you should be able to handle it. Why do I always have to say it? Don't forget I'm taking care of you? Taking care of me. Who does he think he is? I'm not under the impression that I'm being taken care of by my husband. Sure, he pays the rent, but I'm the one covering the living expenses. If you look at the expenses, I'm paying more, so I don't understand why he's talking down to me like this. But arguing about it now is a waste of time. What I need to do is get as much cleaning done as possible, right now. Seeing my husband lounging on the sofa watching TV while I'm frantically cleaning was infuriating, but I managed to get the cleaning done to a decent standard before his mother arrived. I'm coming in. It's been a while. How have you been? I'm not old enough to need your concern. I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. Oh, is that so? No, am I being perceived as someone who would say such snide remarks? Well, this isn't the first time dealing with my mother-in-law's personality. I guess she cherishes her son a lot because they're from a single-parent family, but I've always thought her affection was a bit extreme. Even when we went to greet her for our marriage, she looked at me as if I was a woman marrying up, not really trying to build a good relationship with me. Not that I particularly wanted to be close to her, but it feels unnecessary for her to openly dislike me this much. I haven't done anything wrong to my mother-in-law. Nor have I been unreasonable. What does she have against me? Well, my husband also says unreasonable things to me, so coming from such a mother, I guess it's somewhat expected. You know, I've been thinking, aren't your chores a bit half done? It's not like it's a hoarder's house, but I think you could keep it cleaner, couldn't you? I guess so. I've been trying my best, but I also have a job every day, so I can't spend that much time on it. I was a single parent too, but I managed to keep the house clean. No need for excuses. No. I'm not making excuses. I've genuinely been busy lately, with tasks from work that didn't get finished at the office and had to be done at home. If a system we're developing has an error, it needs to be fixed before the deadline. If we don't make the fix in time, it would be a big problem. I wish you wouldn't complain without understanding anything about my job. And to say one thing, they were living on welfare. My mother-in-law isn't working, so her situation isn't much different from a stay-at-home mom. Even as a single parent, she had more time, so naturally, she should have been able to do the household chores. Comparing me to that is wrong. And, since we both work, instead of blaming just me, how about blaming her son who doesn't do anything besides his job? I didn't intend to fight with my mother-in-law, but being criticized right after she visits made me quite irritated. Maybe you shouldn't say that? Besides, I'm the only one doing the chores around here, so it's tough. That sounded a bit sarcastic, didn't it? Well, but I think she won't understand unless I say it like that. Huh? You can't be thinking of making your husband do chores? I would like him to help, but the reality is, he doesn't. You're the wife, so it's only natural for you to do the housework. And I heard that my son is the one paying the rent. So, it's only logical for you to do at least that much. Who do you think is the breadwinner of the house? If you can't even understand such hierarchy, you shouldn't have gotten married. That's why I was against the marriage. Huh? I was so flabbergasted I couldn't find the words. Is she serious? I wish she would stop joking around. It's absurd for her to butt into someone else's family matters. Talking to such a person is a waste of time and only uses up energy. I just nodded along and showed her into the living room. Hey, how about we have seafood today? There's a nice place at Fisherman's Wharf. Wow, that sounds great. Let's treat ourselves to a nice meal for a change. Sarah? We'll be waiting at home, so could you take out seafood for everyone? Oh, and add some mussels and fatty lobster for me. So, I'm being made to run errands again. And neither of them even pretends to reach for their wallets. They expect me to pay, I suppose. Well, I can see complaining about money would only bring more complaints. Besides, I'd rather get out for a walk than stay in this house, so it works out. Still, the thought of splurging on expensive seafood for them is infuriating, but it's not worth dwelling on. With that in mind, I headed to the place. Upon returning home with the seafood. You took quite some time. I wish you would consider the people waiting. Ha. She had no words to thank me for purchasing it. She's like a complaint machine, effortlessly churning out grievances. I almost admire the ability to find fault in everything. I was tempted to retort sarcastically, but I restrained myself and took a seat instead. The day dragged on lazily until the evening, when the two of them went out for dinner. I wasn't invited, but really, what rude people. The two of them came back and spent the evening drinking in the living room, and in the end, my mother-in-law decided to stay the night. We had separate bedrooms, so it wasn't too much of an issue, but I was still taken aback by the lack of courtesy. She left the next day, but my day off was ruined, and I was left feeling quite stressed. After that, my mother-in-law started visiting our house almost every week. I don't know if she's coming to make snide remarks at me or just to see her beloved son, but either way, I was living in a state of constant stress. Hey, I'm going to be on a business trip for a week starting next week. So, I'm counting on you to take care of the house. What? A business trip? Why are you suddenly going on a business trip? There's a presentation for a system I developed, and I was involved as the main developer. The business trip wasn't a lie, but I was a little excited to have some time to myself for a change. Every week, facing complaints about housekeeping, meals, and my role as a wife from my mother-in-law. No matter how busy, my husband claims to be the breadwinner and refuses to help with any household chores. I was so fed up with such a life that I headed to the business trip planning to refresh myself. The presentation for the new system was nerve-wracking and more exhausting than my usual job, but for 1 week, without anyone complaining, I felt truly at ease. After the business trip was over, I returned home to find. Huh? You're here? Well, yes. I moved in a week ago and have been living here. I'll take the bedroom you were using on the second floor, so you can use the storage room on the first floor or the unused room on the third floor. What? I wasn't told about this. What do you mean? The head of the household has given his permission, so there's no need for me to get yours. The person paying the rent decides everything. Huh? I had to ask again, but I'm not hallucinating, right? Why is my mother-in-law living here? I don't understand. Just her visiting every week was stressful enough, but living together is out of the question. Sure, my mother-in-law lives alone, and she is of a certain age. Something might happen, and maybe my husband is worried, but starting to live together without consulting me is unacceptable. Who do they think this house belongs to? I wanted to say. And my husband, too. Such presumption is truly unforgivable. Hello? When I came back, your mom was here. What's this about living together? What do you mean? It's just as you see. There's nothing wrong with it, right? That's ridiculous. Why wasn't I consulted? There's no need to consult you. I've said it multiple times, but I'm the one paying the rent here. Shouldn't you be following my decision? I was so astounded I couldn't say anything. So, he's seriously saying that. All right, if that's how it's going to be, then keep saying it. But it seems he's forgotten something important. Does he even realize who we're renting this house from? I won't let him forget just the convenient parts. I grabbed the suitcase I had brought on my business trip and went back to my parents' house. It's like that, he just moved his mother in without asking me. Don't you think that's strange? Yeah. Has he been mistreating you like this all along? I didn't tell you because I thought it would worry you, and everyone said this was normal, so I kept quiet, but I can't take it anymore. Right. I understand, then, I have a plan, my father said before making a phone call. From that day, I started living at my parents' house and didn't contact my husband for a week. Then came Saturday. My father and I went to the house where my husband and mother-in-law were living. When we rang the doorbell, my husband, who looked like he had just woken up, came out and frowned upon seeing my father and me. Huh? Here. Can you submit this divorce paper? What? Wait, what do you mean? I know everything you and your mother have been doing. Stop playing dumb. My father said, glaring at my husband, who seemed a bit intimidated. He completely cowered and wouldn't meet my eyes. But I continued talking to my husband. You both have been bullying me. Don't think you can get away with it. No, there's no need for a divorce. We don't have to go that far. So, what do you think you've done so far? Acting all high and mighty, and now getting cold feet as I mention a divorce. What do you take me for? I'm not usually the type to get so emotional and yell, but I think my husband was shocked by my outburst. But it was proof of how much anger I had accumulated. My daughter's words will certainly be heard, and from now on, you'll be paying the full rent for this house. I have no intention of giving any discounts to my daughter and a stranger anymore. Huh? This house will not be $3,600 next month, but $36,000. Got it? I've brought the contract, so submit the divorce papers and then agree this contract as well. When we said that, my husband was so shocked he seemed lost for words. The figure of $36,000 must have floored him, but we were dead serious. How can you suddenly expect such an amount? That's crazy! It's impossible! Huh? You think you can say it's impossible? No, but... We didn't even have a formal contract for this house, did we? Once we're divorced and you're a stranger, you can't keep living here. If you can't pay the rent for this house, you should leave immediately. We hadn't signed a contract, so we were able to leave strongly. Of course, my husband had never imagined things would turn out like this. But regretting it now is too late. He needs to take full responsibility for his actions. We remained firm, unshaken by my husband's refusal, but then my mother-in-law, who had overheard the commotion, came out from behind. "What's all this noise about?" "Long time no see. To cut to the chase, this house belongs to me, so please leave. I'm having my daughter divorce you, and I have no intention of letting strangers live here." "Huh? Leave? What are you talking about? Don't say such ridiculous things." "Who exactly is being ridiculous here? And if you want to justify your actions, feel free to take it to court." "Court?" Hearing the word court, my mother-in-law and husband were surprised, but this was all part of the plan I had discussed with my father. If these two caused trouble and there was no other way, we planned to take legal action. This was my suggestion, knowing that people without common sense wouldn't understand reasonable discussions. But precisely because they lack common sense, the moment we mentioned a lawyer, both were visibly shaken. Where did all their bravado go? They exchanged glances, eyes swimming in panic. I guessed they were probably flustered. "You have a job, so you can just move closer to your workplace. That's all there is to it, right?" "I'm saying this because I don't have that kind of money." "Don't have the money? You've got to be kidding. Given your salary, you should be able to save some amount. Are you telling me you've been blowing over $2,000 a month on fun?" "Well, I never thought I needed to save." I was dumbfounded. He had a regular job, and the only expense he was covering was the rent. I was the one paying for the car and all other living expenses, so I had thought he would have saved up a bit more. He's really joking around. "That's why we can't get divorced and moving out." "Right. Once you're married, it's not that easy to just get divorced. How long are you going to stick with such outdated ideas? I have no hesitation in divorcing someone as unreasonable and self-centered as you two. Are you even aware of what you've done?" Who's the one joking here? Please don't make me any angrier than I already am. They don't seem to understand how much they have put me through. So they can casually say they don't want a divorce or ask for help because they're broke. That's not my problem. And now that I think about it, maybe my husband married me for my money. Not me, but my parents' money since they run a company. He could live in a large mansion cheaply, and eventually, I would inherit my parents' substantial fortune. He must have been aiming for that, but I wish he'd stop underestimating people. Don't forget we'll have the upper hand if this goes to court. You have 1 week to leave this house. "Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'll do anything, just give me another chance. I believe we can make it work. I might have misunderstood some things, but we're a married couple. We promise to overcome anything together." That's why we're getting divorced. You can't just continue a marriage with pretty words. And after betraying me, don't think you still have my trust. I will never trust you again. As I said before, we have a great lawyer on our side. Of course, you're welcome to hire your own lawyer for negotiation, but I advise against it, especially since you can't even afford to move out. My father's point is valid. Without money for moving out, hiring a lawyer is out of the question. Even if they did hire a lawyer, getting my husband divorced and out of the house would be straightforward. That's all. I have no intention of discussing this with you any further. With that, I returned to my parents' house with my father. I had already blocked his phone number, so there were no calls, but my husband and mother-in-law kept contacting me using email, messenger, and social media messaging. I was truly disappointed and dumbfounded that they didn't understand what I was saying, but I stuck to ignoring them. I had communicated our side, and if they wouldn't comply, then we'd just have to have a lawyer handle it. Since we had strong backing, I wasn't worried at all. By the way, what happened after that? Well, tomorrow is the deadline we set, so I told them if the divorce and moving out aren't completed by then, we'd call the lawyer. Then, this evening, they contacted me to say they'd filed the divorce papers at the city court and had packed up to move out. They said they'd bring the keys here. I see. I'll take care of it then. You probably don't want to see their faces. That's right. Thanks, Dad. Thanks to my father handling the key handover, I was able to avoid seeing those two. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, those two were living a miserable life. My mother-in-law, having no job and unable to sustain a living, had initially moved with him to a business hotel for the first few days before settling into a very cheap, bathless apartment, starting a life together that was stress-filled every day compared to the quality of life they had before. Seemingly endless parental quarrels ensued. Well, but he has a job, so it's not like they're luxury problems, right? From what I heard, he's been spending recklessly due to stress, borrowing money from acquaintances. Really? Is that so? So, they've been pretty much abandoned by their friends, wondering how they'll live from now on. Without money and having to take care of his mother. I doubt anyone would marry someone like that. Well, people of that age who don't know how to manage money probably shouldn't marry for everyone's sake. Thinking about them being abandoned by their friends felt truly pitiful, but this could be a good opportunity for them to acknowledge what they've done and rehabilitate. As for me, I found a place to live on my own after that, and now I'm happily living there, enjoying my days. Work is going well, with significant projects that give me a sense of fulfillment, and my relationship with my parents is great. Whether I'll remarry in the future is uncertain, but for now, I'm enjoying my life. No matter how much money one might have, ultimately, relationships are what matter. If you can build healthy and good relationships, you can live happily even without money. I hope to continue living my life valuing fulfillment, friends, and family without being obsessed with money. My daughter is with her grandmother, so don't worry and just focus on your treatment. After an unexpected accident, I was forced into a hospital stay, unable to go pick up my daughter myself. My husband told me not to worry because he had left our daughter with his mother. As soon as I was discharged, I went to my in-laws' house to pick her up. Granddaughter? I don't know what you're talking about. Didn't my son say he would take care of her and took her back? But I definitely left her with you, Mom. Why would you say such a lie? What's going on? You've never taken care of children before. There's no way you could balance work and childcare. Wait, calm down. My husband, who had started to panic, turned pale at the sight of someone who had just returned home and fled in haste. The person who appeared was known to be my husband's nemesis, marking the beginning of his downfall. I married my husband, a co-worker at the same company. 2 years after I joined, a new project started, and both my husband and I were part of it. Our relationship evolved from professional to romantic, and we got married 3 years later. For a while, we both worked, but it was deemed inappropriate for a married couple to be in the same department, so I was transferred to another. I had to abandon the skills I had honed and learn new things from scratch. Just when I was starting to feel comfortable in my new role, I found out I was pregnant and decided to quit my job to become a full-time homemaker. My husband had always said he wanted children soon after getting married. I also wanted to have children in my 20s. However, we didn't actively try for a baby, let the nature take its own course. As we had hoped, I got pregnant and gave birth. We often heard it would be nice to have a girl first, and I was thrilled when our baby was indeed a girl. I felt a growing sense of motherhood, looking forward to raising our child together with my husband. However, my husband was different. Despite his earlier eagerness for children, he showed little interest once our daughter was born. He never participated in childcare, leaving me to raise our daughter alone. The only consolation was that he never got irritated by the baby's night crying. We lived in the same area as my in-laws. I had wanted to live near my parents, but it was inconvenient for commuting, so we reluctantly settled here. Although I had been anxious about my relationship with my in-laws, interacting with them turned out to be easier than expected. Considering the common stories of disputes, I could say my relationship with my in-laws was good. My mother-in-law was a very straightforward person, the type to speak her mind almost immediately. Because she often spoke without considering how her words would be received or felt, I sometimes found myself puzzled by the meaning behind her words. My father-in-law was a man whose motto seemed to be purity and righteousness. He always tried to act considering others' positions and despised anyone who acted against his beliefs. However, when it came to my daughter, he would completely soften up. He wasn't just indulgent, He was a person full of humanity who would educate her while praising her to the skies whenever she did something good as a person. Yet, my husband seemed to view his father with fear, maintaining distance and preferring to avoid any interaction if possible. As my daughter turned 2, my husband's job became busier due to a transfer to another department. Using his busyness as an excuse, he became even more distant from our daughter. At 2 years old, she was curious about everything, and if you took your eyes off her for a moment, you couldn't be sure what she would get into. I wasn't asking my husband to spend hours on end with our daughter. I just wanted him to keep her company while I cooked or during the brief times I bathed. However, my husband insisted that as the family's breadwinner, he needed his rest and wouldn't listen. Having my husband lounging around at home only increased my workload, leaving me exhausted from taking care of both our daughter and him. I looked forward to our daughter's growth, thinking it would be exciting to see what comes next, which kept me going. But with my husband, there was no growth to anticipate, and the lack of any expectations only made my tiredness accumulate. Amidst all this, my husband's affair came to light. The trigger was lipstick on his dress shirt. Knowing he commuted on crowded trains, it wouldn't have been strange if the lipstick came from there. If he had used that as an excuse, I probably would have let it slide without suspecting an affair, thinking, it can't be helped. However, he acted suspiciously just from my asking, "What's this lipstick from?" His expression immediately became strained, his eyes darted around, and he could only open and close his mouth without saying anything meaningful. "I can't believe I'm asking this, but are you cheating?" "No, it was just a moment of folly. Someone from a company I work with took me to a club. And then," he said he got drunk at a high-end club and, next thing he knew, he spent the night in a hotel room with a woman who works there. While I understand that it's her job to be nice to customers like my husband to some extent, sharing a bed and developing a romantic relationship indicates it might have been serious beyond work. My husband, albeit regretful and shrinking in guilt, apologized, so I decided to forgive him this one time, setting conditions. I thought about how, being a stay-at-home mom with a young daughter, divorcing would only make things harder for her. But if something like this happens again, we're getting a divorce. And I'll demand twice the amount in alimony, including for this time. Understood. I'll take it to heart. I won't betray you ever again. My husband, perhaps wanting to mend things further, started showering our daughter, who he had previously shown little interest in, with smiles and suggested they play together. It seemed forced and silly to me, but I went along with it, hoping this might encourage him to spend more time with her. "Look at that, sweetie. Daddy wants to play with you." My daughter was initially surprised, but soon climbed onto his lap, begging him to read her a picture book. I was momentarily moved by this scene I had longed to see, only for him to get up a few minutes later, claiming he needed to run to the convenience store, and left without looking back. After that, I never saw him interact with our daughter again. In the end, my husband had no interest in our child, and I was left to single-handedly manage the childcare. Days turned into a routine where my husband was always too busy with work, and his time at home was minimal. As for the affair, I decided not to dwell on suspicions. If he said he was working, I chose to believe him, thinking any lies would eventually come out. Especially since I kept in touch with some colleagues from before I quit my job. My husband knew this, so I figured he wouldn't dare lie about something that could easily be uncovered. Then, one day, I had an unavoidable appointment and couldn't take my daughter with me. I decided to use drop-in daycare, despite the offers from my in-laws to help without hesitation. I feared becoming too reliant on them. I wished my husband would participate more in parenting so I could feel more comfortable asking his parents for help. As I left my daughter at the daycare, she started fussing, not wanting to be apart from me. She's lively and a bit restless. But then she always wanted to stay by my side. The daycare staff managed to distract her with her favorite books and toys, allowing me to leave. I hurried to finish my errands, trying to pick up my daughter as soon as possible. Little did I know, a shocking incident was about to unfold. Just as I heard someone behind me yell, "Watch out," my consciousness abruptly cut off. The next thing I knew, I was lying in a hospital bed. A runaway car had crashed into the building I was in, causing a major accident that involved several employees and customers. I had become one of the injured customers. That's what the nurse explained to me when I regained consciousness. My first thought after understanding my situation was of my daughter. The nurse told me all my belongings were collected and stored in a cupboard. I tried to get up to fetch my phone from my purse, but the mere act of sitting up sent intense pain throughout my body. I asked the nurse to get my phone for me, and I contacted my husband. Thinking it would be bad to call him during work, I sent an email instead, but I was restless until he replied. His response came somewhat late, just a single word, "No problem." The brevity and lack of warmth in his reply only heightened my anxiety. Not just about my daughter. He didn't ask about the accident or how I was injured at all. I later found out it was quite a major accident, significant enough to make the news. The driver was a young person doing something dangerous, and even though I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, the police came to question me at the hospital. I thought about sneaking out to check on my daughter, but I couldn't even get out of bed on my own. My husband came just once for my admission paperwork and to bring me a change of clothes, but hasn't visited since. The more I thought about it, the more I couldn't stop, and when I tried contacting my husband multiple times, he said our daughter was already asleep, or that my mother-in-law was taking good care of her and enjoying her company, so I shouldn't disturb them. When I asked if we could talk on the phone because I wanted to discuss something with him, he refused, saying he was tired from juggling work and unfamiliar childcare tasks, and that phone calls would break his concentration. However, he did reply to about 20% of the emails I sent, albeit in very short and terse responses. If I sent a series of long emails, he'd snap at me to make my messages clearer and shorter, saying he didn't have time to read emails and not to send unnecessary ones. Afterward, my doctor said he wanted to talk with me and a family member together. I asked my husband to come, but he rebuffed me, saying he should prioritize childcare and that I could handle it alone. By this time, I had become unable to say anything to my husband, who used inexperienced childcare as an excuse for everything. I felt guilty for making him take care of our daughter because I was injured. Eventually, I recovered enough that my doctor said I could be discharged after the next checkup if there were no problems. My husband had only brought me a change of clothes once, so I had been rotating through those, meaning I had minimal luggage when leaving the hospital. For anything I lacked, I used the hospital's rentals. I took the taxi to the store near our house. Then I spotted my husband, who was supposed to be at work, walking in being affectionate with a young woman. This young woman was his affair partner, the same one who had left lipstick on his dress shirt before. It seemed absurd to hide and pretend I hadn't seen them. Approaching my husband as if it were the most natural thing in the world, I asked, "What are you doing here? And who might this be?" Even though I knew she was the affair partner, I pretended not to know. "I'm here for work." "This person is someone from work." His voice was clearly nervous. Without pointing that out, I briefly nodded at the woman and asked my husband about our daughter. He made a strained excuse, saying everything was fine and that he had put our daughter in daycare for the day. Normally, one would say they use daycare while working, implying it was a regular arrangement. But my husband specifically said, "today." That made me wonder about all the other days. Holding back my urge to confront him, I pretended to have heard from my mother-in-law. I was mistaken. "She's with my mom." He brazenly reassured me everything was fine. Meanwhile, the affair partner seemed confused, tugging at my husband's arm, trying to understand what was going on. However, the inclusion of words like mother-in-law and daughter in our conversation made it clear to the affair partner that my husband was married. She became assertive after initially pulling at my husband's arm hesitantly. Her first words were, "You lied to me." Summarizing their argument, it appeared my husband had pretended to be unmarried while dating this woman. Shockingly, he had not only dated her but had also promised marriage. He had even met her parents, scouted wedding venues, and behaved like an engaged couple, despite being a married man. Give me back the time I spent dating you. Don't say that. You had a good time, didn't you? What? If I knew you were married, I wouldn't have given you the time of day. They met by chance, sitting next to each other at a shot bar counter. The woman had just broken up with her boyfriend and was vulnerable. My husband took advantage of her weakened state to start the affair. The more I heard, the more the woman seemed like another victim. I suggested we exchange contact information, and she eagerly agreed, handing me her business card before leaving with tears in her eyes. I couldn't help but maliciously ask my husband, "Aren't you going to chase after her?" Should I chase after her in situations like this? Huh? I have no idea. Although I was being spiteful because I wanted to know if I was truly the one he cared about, I didn't expect him to respond with a question. Both the other woman and I had to wonder what we ever saw in him. I was filled with a desire to question my past self for agreeing to marry him. After that, my husband and I went home in silence. I wasn't foolish enough to make a scene with a marital dispute in public. But that didn't mean I had forgiven him or that my anger had subsided. Taking advantage of the situation, my husband began making self-serving statements. I'm not in the wrong. I was keeping our promise, but that woman kept following me. She said she'd die if I didn't date her. You remembered our promise, then? So, this will be quick. If you cheat again, we're immediately getting a divorce, and the alimony will be double, including the amount from last time. Suddenly, my husband started to panic, claiming it was just a moment of weakness. He apologized profusely, saying he was just lonely while I was in the hospital, but when you think about it calmly, he was blaming me. If he was lonely without me, he could have brought our daughter to visit. I realized discussing this just between the two of us wouldn't get us anywhere, so I suggested we go to his parents' house to have a conversation with his parents as mediators. Partly because I wanted to pick up our daughter as soon as possible. Upon arriving at my in-laws, my mother-in-law greeted us. It seems like our granddaughter has been quite the burden on you. Thank you. So, where is she? Granddaughter? I haven't seen her in a month. What are you talking about? My husband then started to panic even more, sweating profusely. Don't joke around, Mom. I left her here before I went on a trip a month ago, remember? I said I'd need you to look after her for a month. Are you losing it? Don't you dare accuse your mother of dementia, you foolish son. So, you were supposed to be focusing on work and childcare this past month, right? What have you done with our precious daughter? I questioned my husband with uncanny vigor. My husband, nearly in tears, kept insisting he hadn't lied, that it was my mother-in-law who was lying. Should we go to the police and file a missing person report? Yes, we should. Wait, I didn't do anything. I just went on a nice trip with her. My husband started rambling about things nobody asked, seemingly unaware he was confessing. Watching him made me feel both pitiful and ridiculous, so I turned my gaze elsewhere. That's when I saw the person I'd been longing to see outside the window and waved. As that person came closer, another figure became apparent. It was my father-in-law. He had sensed there might be trouble at home today and had taken our daughter out to keep her away from it. Seeing me for the first time in a month, my daughter eagerly walked towards me. She seemed to have been bought princess-like clothes by her father-in-law, and her gestures seemed somewhat precocious, as if she, too, was in a princess-like mood. Upon entering the room and seeing my husband, my father-in-law's demeanor instantly shifted to one filled with an intense aura. However, for my daughter's sake, he quickly reverted to his usual calm expression and handed her over to my mother-in-law. It seemed he was well aware of the storm that was about to unfold. My daughter gave me a puzzled look, wondering why I wasn't holding her, but I told her to play with Grandma for a bit, and I'd join them later. My mother-in-law then took over, starting to praise the dress my daughter was wearing. Pleased, my daughter's interest quickly shifted to her new outfit, and she moved to another room with my mother-in-law. Once they were out of sight, my father-in-law's expression turned serious again. My husband, noticing his father's glare, trembled with fear. Then, for some reason, he suddenly dashed out of the room and ran out of the house barefoot, clearly trying to escape. However, he was quickly caught by my father-in-law. Despite his age, he moved with surprising agility. I recalled hearing he had been involved in sports when he was younger, though I believe it was a sport where being fast wasn't necessarily the focus. You might wonder how it came to be that my in-laws and I were so in sync. The turning point was a call of rebuke from my mother-in-law about 3 weeks into my hospital stay. She chided me for leaving our daughter with her grandparents for 3 weeks, questioning my responsibilities as a mother. I was taken aback, having thought my husband had explained the situation to her. Panicking, I asked if she hadn't heard the circumstances from my husband. My son told me, "You are playing around and neglecting your child. He has decided to go on a sudden business trip and is not sure what to do with his grandchildren. I hear that you would like me to take care of your granddaughter if possible." I was astonished to find out my husband had been lying so blatantly. I quickly explained to my mother-in-law what my husband had told me and the actual situation I was in. She was speechless for a moment, but then immediately apologized for misunderstanding and making such a terrible assumption without knowing the full story. Once our misunderstanding was cleared, the question remained, what was my husband actually doing behind my back? I told her I had a hunch and needed some time to confirm it before ending our call. Immediately afterward, I reached out to a former coworker. Though we were just teammates, this person had joined the company the same year as my husband. I still often consult with a woman who was like a big sister to everyone, even after she had left the job. While she hesitated to share due to privacy concerns, she sensed something was wrong and told me about my husband's schedule. According to her, he hadn't gone on a business trip but had taken a long vacation for a family trip instead. It seems he had been complaining to everyone that it was all my fault he had to suddenly take a long holiday. As a result, I ended up getting scolded by her. I won't ask for the reasons, but you worked at this company too, so you know how busy this period is, right? I'm not saying you can't go on a family trip, but couldn't you have just shifted the season a bit? Dealing with childcare and recovering from my injury, it seems my memory of my working days had faded. After she pointed it out, I checked the calendar and remembered that it indeed was a very busy period. My husband, being directly involved, should have known how inconvenient his long vacation would be for everyone else. So, why did he insist on going? I couldn't stop complaining to my former coworker over the phone, but I also wanted her to understand my side of the story. After hearing my explanation, she was so shocked that there was a moment of silence. She spoke again very solemnly, asking me to stay on the line while she checked something. A few minutes later, she told me she had found a reservation for 2 made right after I was admitted to the hospital. Right after you got admitted, he booked a trip for 2. That means he knew about your hospitalization and didn't rush to your side but went on to book a trip. That's outrageous. My former coworker can be quite intimidating when angry. After spewing a lot of foul language belittling my husband, she told me that she would always be there to help. The next day, my doctor told me I could be discharged by the weekend if there were no problems in the next checkup. I relayed this to my mother-in-law, and we devised a plan to catch my husband red-handed. As per the doctor's declaration, my discharge was scheduled for the weekend, but I told my husband it would be the following week. It made him believe he had more time to enjoy his affair, which led to him being caught at the station. If he had attended the medical briefing with me, he would have known that the discharge date could be moved up. Don't run, you coward. If you have nothing to hide, there's no need to run, right? This is different. It's a knee-jerk reaction. Don't make excuses, liar. I don't want to believe anything you say. I thought you had changed and believed in not ending our relationship, yet you continued to cheat. I brought up the conditionally granted forgiveness from before and stated that it was time to enforce that promise. Immediate divorce, alimony doubled. I said it was non-negotiable. My husband blamed the woman for being clingy after the breakup, or threatening not to break up unless he took her on a trip, putting all the blame for his continued affair on the other woman. However, after being yelled at by my father-in-law to get his act together, my husband shrank away and became silent, unable to retort. The plan to discipline my husband worked better than I expected. Because my husband was more foolish than I imagined. His lies were exposed in broad daylight, and the impact spread far beyond what I anticipated. First, regarding my husband's affair partner, after exchanging several messages to verify my husband's claims. She provided evidence like photos taken with her family, pamphlets from wedding venue scouting, business cards from the staff who assisted them, and even details about trying on wedding dresses and viewing engagement rings. The more I heard, the more I saw her not as merely another woman involved in an affair but as another victim of my husband, just like me. I shared with her the lies my husband had told me, providing her with information. She had no intention of marrying a married man, let alone stealing someone's husband, now knowing the truth. She said she would return him to me, but I too didn't want him back. Eventually, my husband's affair partner decided to formally demand compensation for breaking off the engagement. Furthermore, her parents, outraged that their daughter was deceived by a heartless marriage scammer, filed a police report. By then, my divorce from my husband had been finalized, so no harm came to me or our daughter. The case of marriage fraud initiated by my husband was heading towards a settlement with a significant amount of alimony involved. However, I doubted my ex-husband could afford such a sum. My hunch was right, and he sought help from his parents' house. But his request was in vain. My ex-in-laws, disgusted by his actions, decided to cut ties with him. Even his workplace, which had been lenient up to this point, finally decided to take action. It appears he had already been problematic regarding his work attitude. Amidst this, he made personal trip reservations using the company's computer and took a long vacation without considering the timing, which could have been overlooked if it were for family. However, the affair and the suspicion of marriage fraud were too much to overlook. He was transferred to a department that's seen as a reserve for layoffs. The talk of his affair had spread even there, and he's constantly pointed at for his disgraceful actions, making his workplace unbearable. Still, he's stuck because he has to pay a hefty alimony over the coming years, leaving him unable to quit. He's reportedly gained a lot of weight due to stress and lost much of his hair, becoming unrecognizable. Amidst this, after a company health checkup revealed some serious issues, my ex-husband came crying to me, wanting me to be by his side at his end and pushing for reconciliation. I refused outright. When I warned him that I'd sue for stalking if he showed up again, he fled, trembling. It seems the police investigation for the marriage fraud accusation had left him terrified. I've moved closer to my parents' home, living modestly but happily with my daughter with their support. My relationship with my former in-laws continues at a healthy distance. They sometimes visit, showing great affection for my daughter, for which I'm very grateful. Hey, what are you living for? Huh? I mean, you're always at home. What are you even doing? What are you talking about? I'm the one who does everything around the house. Where exactly? Ever since my husband was hospitalized, his child from a previous marriage has been treating me like a housemaid, and despite being a college student, spends all her time playing and hardly ever attends school. How on earth did she get the idea that I do nothing? Just calm down, will you? What? A lecture? No, it's not like that. The stepchild's face turned red, almost like a red demon. She has always had a tendency to immediately raise her voice and hysterically blame me at the slightest displeasure. Huh? It's your fault Dad's in the hospital again, isn't it? Don't mess with me. Why would it be my fault? I heard it's because of overwork. That's not true. It is. It's your fault. It's headache-inducing to be blamed in such a shrill voice without being listened to. To begin with, my husband's hospitalization is due to an illness he had before. Where did she get her misunderstanding? It seems futile to say anything right now. Since we're at it, I've wanted to say this for a while. You married Dad for his money, didn't you? That's not true. Just because you're somewhat attractive, you seduced Dad for his money, you shameless woman. The stepchild's tirade was unstoppable, and it seemed she might resort to physical violence at any moment. She also fails to grasp the most crucial point. I'm the one paying for her tuition, bills, even the rent for the house we live in. Have anything to say? Well, yeah. And then, she said something she shouldn't have. Like father, like son, huh? Having such a person as my sibling is the worst. He doesn't even show his face at home, maybe he's dead for all I know? We remarried, each having children from previous relationships. I couldn't stay silent when my son was insulted like that. There are things that are okay to say and things that are not. I felt something snap inside me. I intended to keep things peaceful for my husband's sake, but it seemed impossible. You've said something you shouldn't have. Huh? What's that supposed to mean, creepy? What are you gonna do about it, you useless old woman? I see. I thought a thorough punishment was necessary. Not something half-hearted. It's necessary to ensure she never defies me again. Not I see at all. That's when I stopped all the payments. This included the cost of my husband's surgery. As a result, the stepchild would lose everything. I'm Linda Taylor, turning 47 this year. Last year, I remarried with Mike. However, both of us had children from our previous marriages. Mike has a daughter, Emily, who's a student in college, and I have a son, Ethan, who's graduating from college next year. I found myself reminiscing about how I met Mike. Meeting Mike was purely coincidental. Honestly, I never thought I'd remarry at this age. Currently, I import and sell items online. That alone was enough for the business to thrive, but I strongly felt I wanted customers to physically handle the products. That's when I took notice of the variety store managed by Mike. Excuse me. Yes? Can I help you? Actually, I am a business owner. I said so, handing over my business card. Oh, you're the owner. Sorry for being so sudden. Because it was such a charming shop, I thought I'd like to have the goods I sourced from here. Mike seemed to be looking for some change as well, and luckily, we ended up signing a contract right there. After that, things went smoothly, and the products started selling quickly. As if in tandem, our relationship also progressed, and within a year of meeting, we were discussing marriage. I'm really happy, but I'm not getting any younger. I feel the same way. And I haven't mentioned it until now, but I have a son who's graduating from college next year, you know? I have a daughter about the same age, so it's pretty much the same situation. On delving deeper, it turned out Mike's previous wife had passed away. Hearing such a story made it hard for me to feel indifferent. I formally accepted Mike's proposal, and we decided to remarry. However, it wasn't without its issues. This is a bit hard to say, but could you not tell my daughter about your work? I'll do so if that's what you want. Is there any reason? Well, you'll understand once you meet her. Okay, I got it. This led to my first meeting with Mike's daughter, Emily. Nice to meet you. I'm Linda Taylor. Mike and I. Before I could finish, Emily cut in. No need for introductions. Just don't cause me any trouble. Hey. That's no way to speak. Then Emily apologized to me. However, it seemed she really disliked the idea, retreating to her room. Are you sure this is okay? It's fine. You remember what we talked about before, right? The thing about work? Yeah. Well, it's like she has a lot of pride, I guess. I quickly realized. She must really like you, Mike. Do you think so? What else? Maybe she felt like she was losing you. Emily is not a little kid anymore. She should understand that. I hope so. Eventually, we got married. Though our first meeting was the worst, once we started living together, Emily began to show consideration. I thought we could finally feel secure. In fact, during a simple family dinner, no particular problems arose. This marked the beginning of our life as a family of 4. What should I call you? Whatever you're comfortable with is fine. Then, can I call you Linda? Mom still feels a bit awkward. If that's what you prefer. And just call me Emily. Though there were moments of hesitation, Emily started to engage more actively. Having once wished for a daughter, this made me incredibly happy. However, there was one person who viewed our relationship with skepticism. That was Ethan. Mom, can we talk? What's up? It's about Emily. Ethan suddenly lowered his voice. You might want to be cautious. Cautious about what? I can't say specifically, but honestly, it's hard to know what she's thinking. Do you think so? I've given my warning, okay? Okay. Ethan has always been observant from a young age. He is able to intuitively spot troublesome people. I once dated someone who turned out to be a habitual debtor. And it was Ethan who advised me to break it off. Of course, I understood what he was saying, but we had only been living together for about 2 months. So I tried not to think too deeply about it. But as the new year dawned, Ethan's graduation from college was just around the corner. By the way, have you figured out where you're gonna live? Pretty much decided. Found some affordable places near the company. Really? Have you told your dad yet? Yeah, I've talked to him. Planning to move around mid-March. Ethan always takes care of everything himself, without needing me to say anything. So I wasn't too worried. My main concern was Emily. I couldn't help but sigh when comparing her to Ethan. You're thinking about Emily, aren't you? Yeah. Well, yeah. Hasn't she come back yet? Now that you mention it, she hasn't. Really have no clue what she's thinking. Emily returned after midnight. I'm home. Where have you been? You didn't answer your phone. Dad was worried too. Doesn't matter where I was. Mike tried to stop Emily as she headed to her room. Wait. First, why are you so late? Just hung out with friends and got back late. You should at least let us know. If this keeps happening, we'll have to set a curfew. Huh? Why? Well, it makes sense. Now, Emily even started being snarky to Ethan. They were never close, but it had gotten worse recently. However, I didn't yet realize that this was merely the prelude to what was coming. That night ended unsatisfactorily with Emily locking herself in her room. Soon after, the day came for Ethan to move out for his independent life. Mom, you okay? Just feeling a bit lonely, I guess. I'm not a kid anymore. I know, but still. I was widowed by my previous husband. He died in a tragic accident. It was when Ethan was still in elementary school. Since then, I've raised him on my own. Thanks to that, I am now running my own business. Are you leaving already? Yeah. It was a short time, but I had fun. Take care of Mom for me. Leave it to me. Come back anytime. Will do. It was a touching moment, but Emily was the one to dampen the mood. Emily, don't you want to say anything? Not really anything to say. She kept fiddling with her smartphone, not looking up. Ethan seemed exasperated. Well, all I can say is, don't trouble Mom and Dad. Huh? What's that supposed to mean? Just do your best, okay? I know. By then. With that, Ethan left. Soon after, Emily went out too. Where are you going? Out with friends. When will you be back? Why do I have to tell you that? Don't be late. I know, see you. Mike and I exchanged glances. Life from there on was neither particularly good nor bad. Emily was with the job hunting season approaching, but she showed no signs of starting. Concerned, I talked to Mike about it. Indeed, she's been out playing around a lot lately. I think we need to have a serious talk. Yeah. That night, we set up a meeting to discuss the situation. That's when a shocking truth came to light. Emily had failed to earn enough credits and was facing a definite year of delay. It seemed she had given up and resorted to hanging out as a way to cope. Why didn't you tell us something so important? Even if we concede that failing a year can happen, hiding it is the problem. Tuition isn't free, you know. Mike's lecture continued. Emily, not expecting to be reprimanded to this extent, was completely disheartened. Won't you say something? Pressured too much, tears welled up in Emily's eyes. Let's just assume she's already reflecting on it. I tried to offer some support, thinking of Emily, but then. Linda, stay out of this. What? Hey! She was considering your situation when she said that. That's not fair. Emily looked down and fell silent. For now, we're setting a curfew. What? It seems like you're not reflecting, so this is a decided matter. There was nothing Emily could do about it. Despite her rebellious attitude, she couldn't go against Mike's decision. From then on, she became utterly uncontrollable. She ignored everything I said. She would act nice when Mike was around, but when it was just the two of us, she completely ignored me. Concurrently, something unusual was happening to Mike as well. In fact, the signs had been there for a while. One day, when Mike returned from work, his face was pale and he clearly looked ill. Soon after, he became immobile and I had to call an ambulance. Hello, Emily? Your dad's collapsed, so you need to come to the hospital right away. What? What do you mean? I'll explain later. Though he received treatment, Mike's condition seemed quite serious. As a result, he was hospitalized. Why did this happen to Dad? He might need major surgery. Then you should take his place. What's gotten into you all of a sudden? Emily raised her voice and lashed out at me. The sudden change in her demeanor left me flustered. Afterwards, she stormed out of the hospital. I couldn't organize my thoughts about what had just happened. I really wanted to talk more about Mike. But that was now impossible. I couldn't understand why I was being criticized to this extent. The reason Mike was hospitalized was because he had cancer in his liver. The situation didn't seem good, but it appeared manageable with surgery. I can't believe this. After returning home, I shared with her the reality of what was happening to Mike. Even if you can't believe it, this is the truth. I'm not saying this without any basis. No matter the reason, this is all your fault, isn't it? No matter how carefully I explained, it fell on deaf ears. I was truly at my wit's end. Now, we would have to live together, just the two of us. Moreover, with Mike unable to work due to his hospitalization, I had to cover both the hospital bills and our daily living expenses. I decided to consult Ethan about it first. I got the gist of it. But what should we do? We've never lived with just the two of us before. Right. For now, I'll also talk to Dad, okay? That's probably best. I'll tell Dad to try not to burden you too much. Okay. Thanks for handling that. Life with Emily was proving to be full of challenges. I couldn't have managed alone. Ethan being there truly helped. But, is everything really going to be okay? As had always been the case, Emily did not help with any household chores. Despite my resolve to work twice as hard now that Mike was hospitalized, she ignored this and continued to make demands. I felt like I was practically a maid. She complained without lifting a finger to help. I'm not hungry today, so I don't need dinner. You could have told me earlier. I tried to keep my irritation in check. But Emily seemed to provoke me knowingly. Besides, it looks unappetizing. Has it always been like this? That was not the case. She has always been picky with her food, a finicky eater from the start. It had only worsened since it became just the two of us. She would get angry if the ingredients were not bought from the specific supermarket she liked. I bought everything you asked for. I don't want to deal with this hassle either. But Dad. What? I thought she said something in a voice so soft I could barely hear. What did you say? It's nothing. Normally, she would have continued to complain, but she seemed perplexed for some reason. Then, I received a call from Ethan. Are you okay right now? I guess so. We might have been mistaken about something. What are you talking about? I'm not sure yet. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, it seems we might have been deceived. Really? Just make sure not to tell anyone about this conversation. Let's keep it between us for now. All right. Deceived, but by whom? I wondered if Ethan was talking about Emily, but that didn't seem right. It felt more like she just didn't like me for some reason. I couldn't grasp what Ethan meant, but I had to focus on the immediate issues at hand. Emily's situation was overwhelming. 2 days after Ethan's call, I received a message from the hospital asking me to come in the morning. So I headed straight to Mike's room. What could it be about? Probably about the surgery, I think. I see. And how are you feeling now? Much better. That's good to hear. So did Ethan say anything? Ethan? That reminded me of the call from Ethan. No, he didn't say anything special. I see. Is there something you're worried about? Not really, but... It felt like he was being unusually cautious, almost fearful. Then, the surgery was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I guess I will cause trouble to you again. You don't need to worry about that. Just focus on yourself right now. Thanks. That really helps. I hoped that the surgery would improve his condition. When I told Emily about the surgery that night. I see. Got it. She then went straight to her room. I had expected more of a reaction, but she was surprisingly subdued. She used to hurl harsh words at me almost daily, but suddenly, it all stopped. It would be great if this led to peace. But that only lasted until the surgery was over. On the day of the surgery, Emily and I went to the hospital room together. It was the first time we had come to the hospital, just the two of us, since Mike had been hospitalized. I'm glad the surgery went well. Yeah. Emily seemed relieved too. Mike woke up and we were able to talk a bit. However, I had to leave the room because of a phone call, leaving Emily behind. When I returned to the hospital room, I heard Mike's voice sounding angry at Emily. Despite the surgery just having been completed, I worried that excitement might be bad for him, so I opened the door. Is everything okay? Yeah, it's fine. Just checking if she's been going to school properly, right? Yeah. Well, if that's the case. But would that conversation have made Emily look almost like she was going to cry? I wondered if they were actually talking about something else. However, I couldn't ask under the circumstances. Anyway, you just had surgery today, so make sure to rest. Yeah, I will. Emily, don't forget what we talked about earlier. Emily silently nodded. It was on the way back home. I dared to ask about their hospital conversation. What were you talking about at the hospital? I don't need to tell you that. You don't have to be like that. I was trying to improve my relationship with Emily, but it seemed not to be going well. And why Emily was so hostile towards me became increasingly clear. And at the same time, it ignited a flame of vengeance within me. Ultimately, my relationship with Emily remained unchanged. In fact, her hostility towards me seemed to become even more blatant than before. This change occurred after Mike's surgery was successfully completed. 3 months later, Mike was able to be discharged from the hospital. The doctor was amazed at his recovery. I didn't expect you to be discharged this soon. I'm surprised by my own body too. You'll still need to take it easy for a while. I know, but I'm worried about the shop. I've been so preoccupied with my own issues, so I haven't been able to help with that. Should I help you? No, that's okay. I'll handle it. But... really, it's fine. Leave it to me. If you insist. I thought it was odd how he was so insistent on doing everything by himself. I hoped that Emily would calm down and things would become a bit more peaceful with Mike's return home, but that was not the case at all. Less than a month later, his condition worsened, leading to another hospitalization. Perhaps he had overexerted himself before fully recovering. The primary issue, however, was that his liver, which had been operated on, wasn't in good condition. And then, it was the night he was readmitted. Hey, what are you living for? Huh? I mean, you're always at home. What are you even doing? What are you talking about? I'm the one who does everything around the house. Where exactly? No matter what I say, she doesn't listen at all. What does she really want? Just calm down, will you? What? A lecture? No, it's not like that. Emily's face turned red, almost like a red demon. She had raised her voice and blamed me hysterically before, but this was beyond comparison. Huh? It's your fault Dad's in the hospital again, isn't it? Don't mess with me. Why would it be my fault? I heard it was because of overwork. That's not true. It is. It's your fault. The reason he's hospitalized is because of a worsening liver condition. It's headache-inducing to be blamed in such a shrill voice without being listened to. The true cause of his hospitalization was a pre-existing chronic illness. Where did she get her misunderstanding? It seemed like nothing I could say would be accepted. I've wanted to say this for a while now, but you married Dad for his money, didn't you? That's ridiculous. Just because you're somewhat attractive, you seduced Dad for his money, you shameless woman. Emily's tirade was unstoppable, and it seemed she might become physically aggressive at any moment. She was missing the most crucial point. I was the one paying for Emily's college tuition, phone bills, even the rent for the house we live in. Have anything to say? Well, yeah. And then Emily said something she shouldn't have. Like father, like son, huh? Having someone like that for my brother is the worst. Ethan doesn't even show his face at home, maybe he's dead for all I know. We remarried, each having children from previous relationships. I couldn't stay silent when Ethan was insulted like that. There are things that are okay to say and things that are not. I felt something snap inside me. I intended to keep things peaceful for Mike's sake, but it seemed impossible now. You've said something you shouldn't have. Huh? What's that supposed to mean, creepy? What are you gonna do about it, you useless old woman? I see. I thought a thorough punishment was necessary. Not something half-hearted. It's necessary to ensure she never defies me again. Not I see at all. That's when I decided to stop all payments. This included the cost of my husband's second surgery. As a result, the stepchild would lose everything. Or maybe you should just leave. I'd be happier that way. Maybe I will. But then, you'd have to manage your living expenses yourself. Wait a minute. It's too late for that. You asked for this. I took only my smartphone and wallet and left the house. First thing, I decided to call Ethan. Mom? Good timing. Huh? Can we meet in person? It will be faster to talk that way. That's fine. Actually, I've just left the house. I've reached my limit with Emily. I see. But that might be a wise decision. How about the cafe near the station? Okay. I'll be there soon. Ethan and I agreed to meet. This cafe was a place full of memories where we used to come before the remarriage. Arriving first, I ordered the usual coffee and spent some time trying to forget everything that had happened. Sorry, I'm late. It's okay. I had a chance to relax for a bit. So, what's the talk about? Well, listen carefully. First, take a look at this. Ethan showed me his smartphone. It displayed Mike's shop. And the shop was closed due to his hospitalization. What about it? Yeah, you might not understand like this. Let me zoom in. Zooming in, there was a notice in the center of the shutter. Seeing it felt like my heart was being gripped. This means, as you can see, it's been put up for sale. When? About 3 weeks ago, I guess. That was around the time Mike was hospitalized for the second time. But I don't understand why he would do something like this. I can't say for sure either. But there's more, and this might be even more important. What is it? Now, listen to this. A recording? Ethan played the recording. There was static, and although the voice was intermittent, it was definitely audible. Listen carefully. You need to be disliked even more, or it's pointless. Got it? That's Dad's voice, isn't it? Yes. I was concerned, so when I went to the hospital, I heard it and recorded it. The you he's referring to is Emily, right? What's going on? I'm not sure, but you left the house, right? Maybe it's time to take some kind of action? So, you're saying to just watch how things unfold? That would be best. I thought about it. What if all of Emily's harsh words towards me were under Mike's instruction? I felt chills all over my body. This must have been what Ethan meant when he said we might have been deceived. But I was dying to know how he found out about it. Can I ask something? Of course. You mentioned before that we might be deceived, but how did you know? When I went for a get-well visit, I overheard a conversation between Dad and Emily. It sounded suspicious to me. I can't believe something like that happened. It was after you mentioned having trouble with Emily. Looking back, I think that's when he must have been giving her some sort of instructions. After that, I decided to stay in a nearby hotel to wait and see what actions Mike and Emily would take. Within a week, there was movement. Hello? What's going on? I heard you left the house because of Emily. Her verbal abuse was too much, and I just couldn't tolerate it anymore. So, I stopped paying for things like rent and tuition. Isn't that a bit excessive? Is it? Seems normal to me. Oh, and I decided to leave your surgery fees for Emily to handle. What? I couldn't bring myself to talk about the store or what Ethan had told me at that moment. Can't we just talk a bit more calmly about this? I guess, but Emily has to come too. I'll make sure to contact Emily myself. So, we decided to have another discussion. 3 days after the call, I went to the hospital with Ethan. This should clear everything up. Like a final showdown, maybe. Could be. When we entered Mike's room, Emily was already there. Ethan's here too? Yeah. So, what's this about? I've given Emily a stern warning, so I hope you can forgive her this time. You've reflected enough, right? Emily didn't respond. Are you really sorry? What do you say? I asked Emily, but she kept looking down. I have a question too. The shop is up for sale, right? You knew. Why? Well, that's because... According to Mike, the decision to sell was due to a decrease in sales. However, the shop had been fairly profitable before his hospitalization. That doesn't make sense. Sales were not bad. What's the real reason? Mike fell silent. That's when I played the recording Ethan had made. Let me help you to say it. Huh? Mike's voice filled the room. There's no point in hiding it anymore. Maybe it's better to tell everything, isn't it? Mike seemed ready to give up. The truth is, marrying Linda was all about the money. I never expected someone to take an interest in a shop that could go under at any time. I wasn't aware of that. Of course, I never told anyone. Even if that was the case, the sales were good, right? There's a trick to that. What Mike then revealed was shocking. Mike had been buying products himself to inflate sales figures. Why would you do that? To gain your trust. You didn't have to do that. But why involve Emily? To divert suspicion and garner sympathy for my surgery. I was really strapped for cash when I met you, Linda. So, you used Emily. How much did you know, Emily? I knew nothing. I just did as Dad told me. But that seemed excessive. In fact, Emily, trying to adhere strictly to what Mike told her, ended up going too far. Given she was acting on instructions, it's understandable she might become hysterical, absorbing all my directed hate. Mike also scolded her to fully play the villain. However, that didn't mean I was ready to forgive everything. But why sell the shop? Maybe as collateral for a loan. Exactly. I was at a loss for words. A simple consultation could have avoided all these roundabout measures. Now we see who the real villain is. Indeed. What? He was a man who hid his true nature even from his own daughter, driven by twisted motives to act recklessly. Sadly, I can no longer live with you guys. Wait. At least let's talk. We've talked enough. From now on, you're on your own. Surgery costs, tuition, rent, everything. It was when Ethan and I were about to leave the hospital room. Emily started complaining to Mike in a shrill voice. Ethan and I exchanged looks. Who do you think caused all this? I did everything you told me to. This is absurd. It's because you went too far. If you had just followed my instructions. Huh? I did what you told me, and this happened. A distressing parent-child argument unfolded. Maybe take this argument somewhere else? This is a hospital, after all. It's disturbing. You be quiet. This is partly your fault. I sighed deeply. I was willing to forgive if you had a hey, what are you living for? Huh? I mean, you're always at home. What are you even doing? What are you talking about? I'm the one who does everything around the house. Where exactly? Ever since my husband was hospitalized, his child from a previous marriage has been treating me like a housemaid, and despite being a college student, spends all her time playing and hardly ever attends school. How on earth did she get the idea that I do nothing? Just calm down, will you? What? A lecture? No, it's not like that. The stepchild's face turned red, almost like a red demon. She has always had a tendency to immediately raise her voice and hysterically blame me at the slightest displeasure. Huh? It's your fault Dad's in the hospital again, isn't it? Don't mess with me. Why would it be my fault? I heard it's because of overwork. That's not true. It is. It's your fault. It's headache-inducing to be blamed in such a shrill voice without being listened to. To begin with, my husband's hospitalization is due to an illness he had before. Where did she get her misunderstanding? It seems futile to say anything right now. Since we're at it, I've wanted to say this for a while. You married Dad for his money, didn't you? That's not true. Just because you're somewhat attractive, you seduced Dad for his money, you shameless woman. The stepchild's tirade was unstoppable, and it seemed she might resort to physical violence at any moment. She also fails to grasp the most crucial point. I'm the one paying for her tuition, bills, even the rent for the house we live in. Have anything to say? Well, yeah. My name is Grace Johnson. I'm a 41-year-old housewife. Currently, I live with my husband Hudson and our daughter Aria, just the three of us. Hudson, who is a year older than me, was a senior in high school. I had a thing for older guys. And Hudson was quite the standout at school, always at the center of attention. He was tall, with a model-like face, and I remember he was probably the most popular guy in school. I fell for him at first sight as soon as I enrolled and pursued him relentlessly for 2 years until he graduated. At the graduation ceremony, I went to get a button from his jacket. Well, not just the second button, but almost all of them were gone. After Hudson graduated, it felt like there was a huge void in my heart. I couldn't bring myself to date any other guys. You know, like having a major crush on someone and then they're gone. After he left, I just drifted through my high school days without much purpose. But a turning point came when I started college. At a drinking party I was invited to by a friend. Hudson happened to be there by chance. You're Hudson, right? I'm Grace, your junior from high school. Do you remember me? When I approached him, he looked at me intently. With so many girls chasing after him in school, I didn't expect him to remember me, just one among many. But Hudson said, Grace, right? The band girl? I've seen you practicing late in the classroom. Just knowing he remembered me made me incredibly happy. After that, I bumped into him several times at college parties. Though we attended different universities, we had mutual friends, so Hudson was often there. He was still very popular, but I made every effort to stay close to him and finally got to go on a date with him when he landed a job. I finally got to go on a date with him alone when he landed a job. I invited him out to celebrate under the pretext of a job celebration, but he initially turned me down lightly. I'm only interested in fancy places. So, I booked a high-end restaurant and invited him again. Hudson's eyes widened when he heard the name of the restaurant. Well, I guess that was to be expected. It was not the kind of place a regular student could afford. Thanks to that, Hudson was in a good mood and accepted the dinner date. He seemed quite pleased with the luxurious meal in a private room at the high-end restaurant. I had researched in advance what he wanted and presented him with an expensive watch during the meal. When I gave him the watch, I confessed, "Hudson, I've liked you since high school. Would you go out with me?" Hudson was silent for a moment after my confession. Just when I thought it was over, he smiled broadly. "Sure. But I'm a bit high maintenance, so be prepared," he said, holding my hand. I was so happy I could have fainted. I liked his somewhat arrogant demeanor. Being a student, my perspective was generally youthful and naive. And I genuinely believed it was no problem at all that he was high maintenance. "Whatever you wish for, I'll make it happen," I told him, and I officially became his girlfriend. Hudson doesn't know, but the high-end restaurant we went to that day was actually owned by my grandmother. I'm truly grateful to my grandmother for arranging a private room where I could successfully confess my feelings. This is how my relationship with Hudson began. He had warned me about his self-centeredness even before we started dating, and sure enough, he lived up to expectations. He always puts his feelings first. But what surprised me more was how much kinder Hudson was than I had anticipated. He always carries heavy things for me and even opens the car door for me when we're driving. In restaurants, he pulls out the chair for me, and he does all this smoothly. I can't even count how much I've spent on Hudson during our 2 years of dating. I've given him almost everything he's ever wanted as a gift. And when Hudson said he wanted kids, I took it as his way of proposing. I had decided I would give Hudson whatever he wanted, and I was thrilled that he was thinking about marriage, so I immediately started preparing for marriage and pregnancy. That's how we were blessed with our first daughter, Aria, and our marriage became a reality. The joy of marrying Hudson, the man I had always admired, has not faded even now. Even if I come to resent him at times, I think it's still a beautiful memory. The first time I discovered Hudson's affair was when Aria was in elementary school. Learning that the other woman was the instructor at Aria's swimming class left me speechless. Apparently, Hudson had been given her contact information in secret when he took Aria to her class. I was disgusted by the instructor's actions, but I knew Hudson was that type of person from the moment I fell for him at first sight. Hudson's looks have the charm to captivate anyone instantly. Later, I found out that there were 2 or 3 other women he was seeing at the time. Like with the swimming instructor, it seems he was often suddenly given contact information or approached. Hudson can't resist beautiful women, so he probably took the bait as soon as he was approached. I found out about the swimming instructor when I saw the 2 of them in the car together. The very car I had given to Hudson for his most recent birthday. Naturally, I cried and confronted Hudson. I was filled with intense anger over Hudson's involvement with another woman and the fear that he might leave this home. Hudson admitted to the affair and begged for my forgiveness. "I'm really sorry. I want to protect the life I have with you and Aria. It was just a moment of madness. Please forgive me. The only person I love is you, Grace." How could I not forgive him after he said that? Yes, even after years of marriage, I'm still head over heels for my husband. Because I married the man I admired, I always end up forgiving him. If Hudson wants me to cheer up, I'll do it. Then he becomes kind again. I'm fully aware that I'm a hopelessly naive and foolish wife. But if it keeps our family together, then that's okay. Mom, did you forgive Dad again? That's why he keeps doing whatever he wants. You can't give in to his whims anymore, okay? That's how I got scolded by my daughter. Then, when Arya turned 13, another of Hudson's affairs came to light. This time, it was with a receptionist at his workplace. Apparently, the fiancé, who worked in the same company as a receptionist, caught Hudson at her place. That led to a significant confrontation. The affair reached Hudson's boss through her, and although Hudson had to pay compensation, his boss kept it under wraps, so the affair didn't spread throughout the company. But Hudson became dissatisfied with the penalty and stopped going to work. You know, I've been thinking about switching to a company with better conditions. It's good timing, and it's better for me and you, right, Grace? There was no apology for the incident with the receptionist, and his reasoning was completely illogical to me. But in the end, I forgave Hudson again. Arya was furious with me. She had just started middle school and was feeling distrustful of her father. In fact, it was Arya who told me about Hudson's dates with the receptionist. I saw them on my way back from tutoring. I'm glad I wasn't with any friends. Because of my leniency with Hudson, Arya ended up becoming quite responsible. She's been working hard in school and even has plans to study abroad at a university overseas after graduating high school. Thinking that it wouldn't do for her husband to remain unemployed forever, I introduced Hudson to the company he had talked about, which offered better conditions. It seems the terms were to his satisfaction because Hudson switched jobs immediately. 4 years have passed since then. Surprisingly, my husband has been working seriously. He took a job in sales, which seems to suit him well. However, the company he joined deals with pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, and since it offers many products for women, he became a salesperson in the cosmetics department. I was really worried about that. But even with more opportunities to interact with women, Hudson has been coming straight home for his family. As Arya started preparing for her overseas studies in her senior year of high school, our family finally seemed to settle down. It was soon after that Hudson had to go on a solo assignment. I really wanted to go with him, but he said, Arya's high school life is important too, so I'm counting on you, Grace, while I'm away. I just can't say no to Hudson's requests. So, as Hudson said, I decided to stay by Arya's side and keep the home running. Though things between Hudson and Arya seem to be going well for now, Arya still seems to harbor a bit of resentment towards him. It's kinda weird how Dad suddenly became so tame. Well, I can understand how she feels. But these past few years, I haven't sensed any signs of other women from Hudson. Instead, he's been coming home every day and even goes out with the family on his days off. Arya might call me soft, but I want to believe in Hudson. That doesn't mean Hudson's whims have disappeared. He refused the apartment prepared by his company for his solo assignment. He didn't like the old and lived in properties. The company said it's fine to live wherever if he pays the rent himself, so Hudson chose a place he liked. The only fun I'll have on my assignment is watching TV, right? Oh, and make sure to get a brand new hairdryer too. I can't even count how much I've spent on Hudson. I was planning to use Hudson's earnings for Arya's study abroad funds, but it looks like I'll end up using my own money to set up Hudson's living arrangements and pay his rent for the assignment. Mom, you're too soft on Dad. If he just lived in the apartment the company provided, none of this would have happened. I got scolded by my daughter and felt a bit remorseful. So, Arya went with Hudson for his move. She said if I went, I'd just give in to Hudson's demands and end up buying unnecessary things. This is the first time living apart from Hudson, and I cried when seeing him off. Arya seemed a bit exasperated, but Hudson was kind. I'll come back on my days off, so have some delicious food ready for me, he said, patting my back. 2 days after Hudson's move and Arya's return, she told me. Everything went smoothly, so don't worry. I'm glad I left it to Arya. If it were me, I might not have been able to leave Hudson because I'd miss him too much. It's been 3 weeks since Hudson went on his assignment. He said he'd be too busy to come home right away. Tomorrow is a day off, and Hudson is coming home tonight for the first time in a while. I started preparing a feast just like Hudson wanted. Aren't you going overboard with this every time? Arya would say, but I don't mind going the extra mile for Hudson. By 7 p.m., I had a feast laid out on the table, waiting for Hudson's return. But Hudson never came. When I couldn't reach him by phone, I worried that something might have happened to him. Eventually, I told Arya to eat without me, and I waited until morning, but I only managed to get in touch with him the next day at noon. Sorry, there was a problem at work, and I couldn't make it back. I couldn't even contact you, and I'm really sorry for worrying you. I'm just relieved that you are safe. It seemed like Arya sensed something but didn't say anything to me. On the other end of the phone, Hudson said, I'll make it up to you next time. Hey, remember the restaurant we went to when we first started dating? Let's go there and talk about everything. I was truly happy that Hudson remembered that moment. I booked the day we confessed our feelings and told Hudson about it. Can you make the reservation under my name? I want to go in style since we're making the effort. Hudson requested, so I changed the reservation right away. I'll definitely come home this weekend. I want to see Arya too. My spirits lifted again. I started preparing immediately. Mom, you're expecting too much from Dad. I don't want to see you get hurt by him, Arya said coldly. It seemed like she had a feeling that Hudson might not come home this weekend either. That weekend, the feast laid out was not eaten by my husband. Arya comforted me gently as I cried on the sofa. After that, Hudson never returned home from his solo assignment. During this time, Arya, who was worried, made a suggestion. Mom, if you want to see Dad, why don't we go to him? Why didn't I think of that? I could have gone to see him any weekend. I nodded and began to prepare immediately. But Arya, with a serious face, said, Mom, there's one condition. I'm going with you. And no matter what, stay calm. Arya's face was so serious that I decided to listen to her wish. Hudson's place was quite far, taking several hours by train. We finally arrived at the apartment where Hudson lives. The room was a bit luxurious, and since I arranged it, I had the keys. Hudson would surely be surprised. Entering the room, the entrance was clean, and the shoes were neatly arranged. The living room was tidy too, not what you'd expect from a bachelor's living space. But something felt off. There were 2 sets of wallets, dishes, toothbrushes, almost as if someone was living there. My heart raced, and as I encountered various pieces of evidence, I couldn't deny that Hudson was living here with someone else. Then, I saw an envelope under the table and my heart pounded. A green envelope. It was a filled-out divorce form, complete with Hudson's signature and seal. I was speechless. My husband intended to divorce. Then, my daughter spoke from behind me. Let's go home, Mom. It's useless to stay here. I hadn't even met Hudson yet, but what was there to talk about? With the filled-out divorce form, Hudson's intentions were clear. Tears naturally overflowed. I barely remember how we got home. Arya supported me as we took the train and a taxi from the station. By the time I realized, it was late at night, and I was sitting on the sofa. A blanket, likely placed by Arya, was on my shoulders, and there was a warm drink on the table. Arya was sitting next to me, fiddling with some device. This is a webcam I installed when Dad moved. I told Dad it was so we could talk anytime, and he happily allowed it. Though he's probably forgotten by now. She likely took it with her when she left the room. Mom, I told you before we went, but please brace yourself. What I'm about to do might be hard for you, but I'm worried about you, Arya said, then played the footage from the camera connected to her smartphone. It's okay, my wife will forgive me no matter what I do. Her family seems really wealthy, you know? They've always given me whatever I wanted whenever I asked for it. The screen showed Hudson and another woman talking. The woman he was talking to was young and beautiful. I've managed to turn quite a bit of what I mooched off her into good money. So, I'm not really interested in her family's wealth. It's too much hassle to ask about it. My daughter's about to graduate from high school, so I'm thinking it's about time to get a divorce and free myself." I was in shock at Hudson's unbelievable words. Every time, Arya had to remind me to stay strong by saying, "Mom, hold on." After saying, "I'm sorry, Mom," Arya carried me to the bedroom. I couldn't tell if I had slept or not until morning came. When I went to the living room, Arya was already there. Seeing me, she rushed over with a worried look. She seemed to want to say something, but when I showed her a smile, her expression changed to one of relief. "Arya, I'm sorry for worrying you. I'll submit that divorce form as he wishes." Arya nodded, and we hugged each other tightly. The old me might have been consumed by jealousy and cried my eyes out. But now, strangely, I felt nothing towards Hudson. The day after we visited Hudson's house, Arya and I quickly went to the city hall and submitted the divorce form. Since then, we've been busy with Arya's high school graduation and preparations for her study abroad. There's been no contact from Hudson. He must be enjoying his life with his mistress, thinking we won't reach out. I thought he might come back on his own for Arya's graduation, but left him be when she said, "He's a stranger now." Today is the day Arya leaves for her study abroad. I was talking to a friend who came to see us off at the airport. During that time, I was checking my smartphone to see if there was anything I had left undone. I've cancelled the old mobile phone, and the sale of the house is complete. Hudson's things have been sent to him, so that's settled. Oh, and I need to cancel the lease on that apartment by the end of next month. As I was muttering to myself, Arya, having said goodbye to her friend, came over. "Mom, it's almost time." I nodded and followed her, pulling my carry-on. Today, Arya is setting off for her study abroad. And I've decided to move abroad as well. There's no need for me to wait for Hudson at home anymore. Arya and I are starting a new life together. I've cancelled the old mobile phone and sold the house we lived in. Arya and I will disappear from Hudson's life without leaving anything behind. That was his last wish. Today was supposed to be the reservation at that restaurant. He hasn't contacted me. Probably, he wanted the reservation under his name to impress some woman. I'll ask Grandma about how he's doing tomorrow. It adds to the excitement of starting a new life. It's been a week since Arya and I moved abroad. We've finished moving in the packages, and our life is starting to settle. The day after we arrived, I called Grandma according to her time zone. She knew about my divorce from Hudson. And she told me about the restaurant. That day, he brought a woman to Grandma's restaurant. Just like 18 years ago, booking a private room in the high-end restaurant. Of course, there's a charge for using a private room at this place. When it came time to pay, Hudson's eyes widened at the amount. When I went with him, there was a discount because of my face pass, but this time it had nothing to do with me. There was no discount, so he must have paid the regular price. However, Hudson would never do something embarrassing. I assumed he presented his card as if nothing was wrong. Though my grandma mentioned his hand was shaking a bit at that moment. I suspect Hudson must have called me afterwards. Probably asking for money. But my number has been cancelled. Hudson must have felt something was off, but he doesn't know my current contact information. Of course, Arya's number has been changed too. I wonder how he's doing. And now, a month has passed since we arrived overseas. Hudson must be in trouble by now. The apartment he's living in is under my name and is due to be cancelled at the end of this month. He should have received a prior notice, but I wonder if he's realized it. It'd be fine if his roommate is someone he can trust. While thinking about this, Arya spoke to me. A friend from back home contacted me. Someone was making a scene at the place where our house used to be. Arya thought it was Dad. Dad seems to be in quite a panic. Just imagining Hudson in a panic is funny. His handsome image is ruined. Mom, what do we do? Go back home for a while? I had thought we'd need to talk to Hudson eventually. But I don't want to meet him. We're not going back. But I will talk to Dad. Arya tilted her head, but I had a plan. This is really the end. Let's face him properly and say goodbye. Arya and I took a nap to adjust to the time difference, preparing for the face-to-face with Hudson. We're no longer a couple, but let's settle this once and for all. Hudson must be sufficiently damaged by now, but that's not enough for me. I've decided not to forgive Hudson. Arya and I sat on the sofa, staring at the webcam above the TV. Soon, my smartphone received a call. They were ready. When I turned on the TV, Hudson appeared on the screen, with a few adults watching the situation in the background. Wah. Grace? Arya too. Where are you guys? Hudson's voice was slightly delayed from his mouth movements. Hudson, long time no see. You look well. Where are we? That's something I can't tell you. Where are you? Hudson, looking confused, answered. Well, I was called by my boss to the president's office at the company this morning. He seemed uncomfortable under the watchful eyes. Hudson didn't seem to grasp the situation. I asked them to accompany you today because I have a lot to tell you, I said, and Hudson looked even more bewildered. First, the divorce form you filled out has been successfully submitted. You probably know since you received the acceptance notice. You were so kind to sign it yourself. No complaints, right? Hudson appeared confused by my words. He definitely had the intention to divorce. However, Hudson countered with something else. But, selling the house is foul play. That was my house too. You shouldn't have sold it without my permission. If you sold it, you should share the money with me. The conversation was veering off track, but since I was planning to discuss this eventually, I decided to explain it right away. You might be misunderstanding something, but that house wasn't ours. It was in my parents' names. So, if my parents decided to sell the house, we had to comply. Hudson looked as if he couldn't believe it. But it's true. Our house was quite a mansion. There was no way Hudson could afford such a house with his income. It was a house my parents had given me as a wedding gift. It happened nearly 20 years ago, so he must have forgotten. I sent you your belongings, didn't I? The watch I gave you, the suits, the accessories. I bought them because you wanted them, but you treated them like trash in your room. Maybe you've already turned them into cash. It probably hit the mark. Hudson clenched his teeth for a moment. It's embarrassing to admit, but why did I spoil this man so much? I loved him that much. The fact is true, but suddenly, I felt a surge of regret. I loved you so much that I was willing to fulfill any request. Even when you cheated, I forgave you, thinking you would eventually come back to me. But if you wanted a divorce, then it's over. I wiped the tears I had been holding back. Really, as Arya said, maybe I was too lenient on him, too forgiving. This divorce could well be said to be my own doing. Seeing me like this, Arya spoke up. Dad, Mom has been waiting for you all this time. No matter what I said, Mom believed in you. You betrayed her, Dad. I won't forgive you. Arya played the recorded voice of Hudson that she had captured. Where did you get this recording from? Hudson was clearly shaken. Arya also showed a picture of Hudson with another woman on the screen. Dad, unlike Mom, I've always doubted you. Sorry. I really wanted to prove your innocence and looked into things, but the more I dug, the more evidence of your affairs I found. You've been pretending not to cheat these past few years, but you've really been playing around quite a bit. Arya presented facts I didn't know. Apparently, Hudson had also committed adultery within his company. Arya had contacted my parents in advance and investigated Hudson's infidelity. No wonder you were coming home properly. Adultery during work hours is ridiculous. After Arya's remark, Hudson showed a slightly sad face. I don't know who you're living with now, but it can be found out. Since Mom can't say it, I will. Dad, we're going to sue you for compensation. Hearing about compensation, Hudson stood up from his chair. He started getting angry, his face turning red. What compensation? There's no way I have that kind of money. Yeah, even the restaurant the other day charged me a crazy amount. I couldn't help but smirk when he brought up the restaurant. Arya immediately retorted. That restaurant was a place of memories for you and Mom. I can't believe you'd take another woman there. It's terrible how you deceived Mom. Do you know how much she was looking forward to it? Dad, you're the worst of all. The lack of money is your own fault. We'll make sure you pay. The staring contest between Hudson and Arya through the screen continued. That's when I took over from Arya. So, Hudson, you'll be hearing from a lawyer. We're prepared for this to go to court. And, as you probably know, the house you're living in now will also be cancelled soon. Make sure you prepare to move. Hudson stood, staring at the screen. Having been adored by everyone around him until now, his anger at being belittled like this was immeasurable. But he could use a taste of defeat. Come on, not forgiving the cheating now, that's dirty. Sneaking around collecting evidence of someone's cheating is creepy and underhanded. And suing for compensation, canceling the current house, how monstrous can you get? You have the worst personality. I wish I could see your parents' faces. Hudson yelled so loud it seemed the speaker might break. You want to see my parents' faces? Well, let's make that final wish come true. My parents have been behind you this whole time. Hudson froze at my words. He looked back at me with a puzzled expression. And then, he slowly turned around. There stood the president and executive director of Hudson's company. The president is my father, and the executive director is my mother. Because you said you didn't want a wedding or a meet and greet because it was too much trouble, you've never seen my parents' faces. Despite your selfishness, my parents respected the man I chose, and have always watched over us generously. Any complaints? Hudson was shaking a bit. He was probably reflecting on his behavior here. When you said you wanted to change jobs, my parents helped you. That's why you're working at this company. Then, my father, who had been silent until now, spoke up as the president, not just as Grace's father. From here on, I have something to say not as Grace's father but as the president. Hudson, it's come to my attention that not only have you been committing adultery during work hours, but you also have had romantic relationships with women from our business contacts. And it's not just one or two women. We've received numerous complaints. Hudson's face went pale. My mother, the executive director, spoke to Arya and me through the screen. From here, it will be about company matters, so you two should rest. If anything happens, we'll contact you. Thank you. Arya and I thanked my mother. And finally, I also had words for Hudson. Hudson, leave Arya to me. By then, goodbye. Then Hudson approached the screen, crying and shouting. I'm sorry. It was my fault. The most important thing to me is you two. Forgive me. Let's live together again. The video cut off midway. Probably, my mother ended the call. This ordeal has caused a lot of worry for my parents. I plan to send them a thank you message later. Arya and I hugged each other, both crying. It's over. This is truly goodbye to Hudson. A few days later, Arya's life at school overseas begins today. After the entrance ceremony, Arya and I had a meal together. And we talked a little about Hudson. In addition to betraying me, Hudson had issues with his work attitude at the company and seemed to have angered my parents considerably. Moreover, it was revealed that he had been having affairs with various people related to his work, naturally leading to his inability to stay at my parents' company. Apparently, his way of doing business also caused some losses, and the company is considering suing him for damages. The woman Hudson had been living with, who knew he was married and was a co-worker from the same company, has agreed to the compensation claim and paid in full. Whether their relationship continues is unknown. Having lost everything, Hudson reportedly started a night job through an acquaintance. The compensation from Hudson is being deposited in small amounts each month. Mom, from now on, I'll protect you. Oh, that's reassuring. But I became stronger too. It's still my turn to protect you. We laughed together, saying that no matter what happens, I don't want to ruin this happy relationship with my daughter. With that thought, I watch my daughter forge ahead towards her dreams. Life overseas has its uncertainties, but as a mother, I'll live strong and enjoy the time with